The UFC heads to Sacramento this weekend with a 13-fight offering. As always, I'm here to break down each of these fights for you, giving my prediction for each. Let's start with the main event. Anthony Hernandez takes on Gregory Rodrigues here in this main event at middleweight. Anthony Hernandez is coming off that loss to Sean Strickland. Strickland has since won the title, so tough to get too hard on him for that one. Gregory Rodrigues coming off 3 consecutive wins, most recently knocking out Bruno Ferreira in a fight that did represent a rematch. Some binary nature to this fight. First and foremost, Hernandez primarily a grappler. We see that here in the statistics, 12.126 takedowns per 15 minutes, and keep in mind this is a 25-minute fight. If it does hit the scorecards, I don't know how likely that is. Rodrigues does land more significant strikes per minute, and he's extremely powerful. If we look at just the size of these two, Gregory Rodrigues, 6'3", compared to Hernandez at 6 feet, but their reach is listed the same at 75 inches. I do think that's somewhat notable here. This is binary in that it is in some ways striker versus grappler, but it's also binary in that it's probably going to be Gregory Rodrigues who finds the win early or Anthony Hernandez who finds the win late. We see Hernandez in a lot of the fights he finds success in, including against Brendan Allen, Michel Pereira. He does come out a little bit slow. His opponents do find success early, but when he can weather that early storm, his cardio and relentless grappling pursuit makes him a very difficult puzzle for a lot of the middleweights to solve. Gregory Rodrigues, when he's at his best, he's finding those early finishes. Hernandez's durability is decent when it comes to his chin, but his body is where he can be susceptible to taking a lot of damage. I do think Rodrigues is going to know that here coming into this fight. Rodrigues has been training with Brendan Allen, who did have some success against Anthony Hernandez, so that is notable. But my pick here is going to be Anthony Hernandez. Flipping over here to the odds right now, we're seeing Hernandez around a minus 170 to minus 180 favorite, depending on your book. DraftKings has him pushing 190. And if you're taking Rodrigues, I would probably just try to find a prop like early KO, round 1 or 2. Again, because as this fight wears on, I do think we're going to see Hernandez start to take over. That is if he can weather that early storm. Rodrigues, we've seen at times in his loss to Cannonier, where he looked great for most of that fight until his cardio started to fail him. He is very muscle-bound as a middleweight. He's super athletic, but again, he's not going to be able to carry that cardio in through 5 rounds, in my opinion. We didn't see it against Cannonier. I don't think it's something he can improve on. And Cannonier isn't someone who grapples all that aggressively. So this is the type of matchup that could certainly wear on that gas tank for Rodrigues. But I will say this, at minus 170 on the money line, like I would rather try to take Hernandez either live if your book offers it, or maybe rounds 3, 4, 5, depending on your book if that's available, because it's going to be tough for him to find an early finish here. Rodrigues is a BJJ black belt. He does have decent defensive grappling ability, but as this fight wears on, I do think the cardio is going to be the difference here. And just quickly looking at the prices on DraftKings, Hernandez is one of the best plays in the model this week. Spoiler alert. We love him here at Occupy Fantasy because of that style. Great cardio, high pace, a lot of takedown attempts, does tend to score extremely well. I like him a lot, but he's going to be popular, so just keep that in mind. If you're playing a bunch of lineups, probably wise to hedge with some Rodrigues. I do not like stacking this fight. I think it would take Rodrigues finding a few knockdowns early and then Hernandez taking over late to maybe end up optimal, but there's a lot of decent underdogs on this card. And I will use that to segue here into the co-main event. We have between Vitor Petrino and Sergey Spivac. So Vitor Petrino debuted as a light heavyweight. He had kind of mixed results there, famously guillotined by what was left of Anthony Smith at the time. He's been somewhat successful since moving up, and I mean, the record is there. It's just the level of competition really isn't on the level of Sergey Spivac. Looking at Petrino's recent results, he had the win over Asplin, very competitive fight throughout, a win over Thomas Peterson and Austin Lane. He's kind of slow and plotty at times. He is the type of athlete that does give Spivac trouble, but I do think the better technical striker here, and this is kind of wild to say, might be Sergey Spivac. Spivac coming off a win over Ante Delia in which he learned how to throw a jab. Very impressive there. Even in that loss prior to Waldo Cortez Acosta, his striking seemed to greatly improve. Spivac, his greatest strength, though, is his submission grappling ability. It's just we haven't really seen him lean on that part of his game all that frequently lately. These guys are both massive. Sergey listed at 6'3", Petrino 6'2", 78 reach for Sergey compared to 77 for Petrino. So two big guys in there, but I do think it's a tough fight to call because both these guys have shown different versions of themselves. Sergey looked terrible against Almeida. I mean, not going to get on him for the Cyril Gane loss, but mixed results for him, right? And then Petrino on the other side, he's taking on kind of lower level heavyweights. I know we like Asplin, but this is a very different matchup. Sergey's a guy who's been ranked for years. I think he's fallen out of the rankings recently, but could work his way right back in there in a very shallow heavyweight division with the win in this spot. One of my preferred underdogs on this card is going to be Sergey Spivac. It's not with a ton of confidence, but looking at the money line right now, around plus 120 to plus 130, depending on your book. I want to see how these guys look at weigh-ins. Like if Sergey seems to be in decent shape, which he usually does, I will feel better about backing him here. Petrino is always in tremendous shape, so I'm not really too worried about what he looks like, but I do think there is value on Sergey as an underdog. You're getting him around, I think, 76 to 7,800, 7,700. So I was close over on DraftKings as well. So I do like Spivac here to probably pull it out via decision. Again, working behind that jab. I think the jab is going to give Petrino some trouble. Petrino, if he kind of rushes in, he could find that early finish, but it hasn't really been a style that he has shown a willingness to engage in. So I like the Spivac side, my favorite underdog, maybe not on the whole card, but certainly so far only through two fights. But let's get into the next fight here. Feature bout between Rener de Ridder and Roman Dolidze. De Ridder had a nice run at 185 when he debuted in the UFC, stringing together wins over Kevin Holland, Bo Nickel, Robert Whittaker, in consecutive order. Then he lost to Brendan Allen, a fight that he looked good early and then kind of fell apart and said he had a bunch of issues in terms of his health outside of the cage. And then last time out against Cal Barallo, didn't look terrible, but really nothing there to write home about in terms of upside. On the other side, Dolidze, he's coming off back-to-back losses for the first time in a long time. Chris Leroy Duncan last time out. Prior to that, he lost to Hernandez, the headliner on this card. So tough to get too down on him for those. But I will say this. I think De Ridder does pretty much everything Dolidze does a little bit better, except for the power. Dolidze does have a power advantage here, but moving up a weight class, I think De Ridder's durability is going to be improved. De Ridder, prior to the UFC, fought for one championship. He spent a lot of time at light heavyweight, even fought for the belt at heavyweight, so I do think he's going to fit well in this weight class. And if we look at the tail of the tape here, beyond just the statistics, just pulling this up, we got De Ridder listed at 6'4" compared to Dolidze at 6'2", 78-inch reach advantage compared to 76 for Dolidze. So yeah, he's going to be plenty big in this weight class, and I do think De Ridder has the ability to get it done inside the distance here. Dolidze had a great third round against Christian Leroy Duncan, was able to out-grapple him there. De Ridder's the better grappler here. Usually Dolidze can either overpower guys with his striking or lean on that grappling. I think De Ridder here is going to be able to kind of neutralize the Dolidze attack early, find some success in the clinch, and then work this fight to the mat. Probably finds a submission in maybe the second or third round. Wouldn't be surprised to see it go to decision, but I feel like these are two fighters who are similar in a lot of ways, but I do think De Ridder still has more upside, especially moving up in a weight class. He feels a bit rejuvenated now. Dolidze looked good in that third round, but really mixed results for him, and his striking isn't all that great. Like I said, he has a power advantage here, but I do think De Ridder has decent durability, especially moving up a weight class. So I do like the Rener de Ridder side. He's around a minus 400 favorite, though. So like I said, if you're looking for value, probably better to play him inside the distance. Next matchup here should be a very fun one at lightweight between Mason Jones and Markel Mederos. Mason Jones, one of the tougher guys on the roster, just a granite chin. This man's head is a cinder block. Not literally, but pretty damn close. Coming off the nice win over Axel Sola, which is aging well. Prior to that, wins over Jeremy Stevens, Balaji Oki. He's looked really good recently, but as good as he is extremely hittable, which could prove dangerous here against a good striker in Markel Mederos. Mederos fought to a draw last time out against Taco Padilla, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Other than that, he really hasn't taken on anyone close to the level of a Mason Jones, and both these guys put out a ton of volume. They both absorb a ton of strikes, but I do think the difference here could actually be the grappling. Mason Jones pursuing takedowns at a 6.3 rate per 15 minutes compared to Mederos, who only pursues 3. Mederos does show solid takedown defense so far in the UFC, but again, he's taking on guys like Hubbard who are trying to take him down, Choinski. Like, I don't really rate them anywhere near Mason Jones, and Jones is in this kind of featured spot here because I think he's going to eat a lot of damage early and then take over as this fight wears on. You could sprinkle on him in rounds 2 or 3, probably find some decent value that way. But yeah, I think chin for chin, I'm going to favor Mason Jones here. But looking at the money line right now, minus 265 to minus 300, depending on your book. I do think Jones is the side. I think he's going to score well for you in DFS. Mederos is going to put out a lot of volume. If he can stay in this fight and mostly keep it standing, he's live as an underdog. So there is some value on that tag. But to me, Jones is certainly the side here. I'm going to be picking him with marginal confidence. But again, just tough guy to put away. I think Mederos is going to start to fade as this one wears on, as we've seen him at times in the past. Another Occupy fantasy favorite here. We have Carly Judice taking on Jace Chavez, and shouts out to Brian doing the shorts on the channel. I do know Carly Judice was one of them, the features this week. She does tend to score tremendously well when it comes to DFS because of her high volume striking style. 8.66 significant strikes landed per minute compared to just 4.13 here for Chavez. These two do have a common opponent in Dubin. Dubin lost, or excuse me, Chavez beat Dubin last time out in a pretty close fight. Judice absolutely steamrolled her. Not to play too much MMA math here, excuse me, but I do think Judice is the side. The one issue is that the moneyline price is kind of insane, minus 500, but I think she's going to be live to find the finish. And again, if we're talking about DFS, Carly Judice is one of our favorite plays here at Occupy, for a reason. Pulling up her game logs, I mean, last time out against Miller just grappled her, really kind of slowed that fight down, but scoring over 100 points at a reasonable price point back-to-back fights prior. I mean, she is once again over 9K here, but she tends to be low owned. So I do think there's upside here. I also think she has upside to find the finish. I really don't rate Chavez all that highly. She's probably going to try to take this fight to the mat, but Judice coming off the Miller fight, Miller doesn't have great wrestling, but a much more skilled grappler. I think she had to be more aware in that spot. And she still has that 80% takedown defense, having taken on better grapplers to what she's going to see here against Chavez. So I know I mentioned there's a lot of live underdogs on this card, knock on wood. I don't really think Chavez is one of them. I think Judice is someone you could tie into parlays. I think I'm probably going to bet her inside the distance to find some better value, but pretty fun fight anytime Judice is in the cage. So if Chavez could hang in there, we could see a fun one for sure. A lot of blood maybe, as we see in a lot of these Judice fights. But let's get into the main card opener here. We have at heavyweight, 3 heavyweight fights on this card. I know we already talked about one of them, but we got Anthony Wint taking on Terrence Chatman here. These are 2 debutantes. Anthony Wint was on Contender Series just 1 week ago with a win over Adams. Absolutely steamrolled him. Pretty good regional fighter, 7-0 professionally. He's taken on a decent level of competition, and he is a former New York Jet. Only 2 games played in the NFL, but he had 2 fumble recoveries. I think that's pretty cool. We talk about these guys like Austin Lane. I don't know. A bunch of others. I mean, Eric Anders was a college linebacker, but Wint is a guy who actually had NFL playing time. So kudos to him for that. He is just a tremendous athlete, explosive. After that win on Contender Series, told Dana, hey, I'm just going to hang out here until you book me for that Sacramento card. And sure enough, they did. Rather than giving him an older heavyweight, though, they're giving him a debutant here in Terrence Chatman, who, if you look at these guys next to each other, I mean, the money line does make sense. We're looking at Wint right now around a minus 1,000. I will say this. I think Chatman is a little bit better than he looks. Not a terrible athlete. He has decent striking process. Can wrestle a little bit against inferior grapplers, but I think Wint just is going to steamroll him here, if I'm being completely transparent. I didn't want to say that. But yeah, Anthony Wint is the guy. I think he's going to just run through Chatman. And again, I don't want to knock Chatman. It is his debut. And these guys do have a common opponent in which Chatman actually had more success finding that quick KO. But Wint seems to be a guy who's improving dramatically from fight to fight. I like him a lot here. I think he gets it done. I don't love the moneyline price. You can maybe just play him round 1, or if you think Chatman, who has been durable, can extend it a little bit, maybe try to find some crazy value in a round 2. But Wint is the side. I think he gets it done with authority. Next fight here, we have Larion Douglas taking on Jamal Emmers. Kind of a theme on this card. We got a lot of big favorites who feel like they're overpriced, but I do think they still get it done. We're having that exact situation here between Larion Douglas and Jamal Emmers. Larion Douglas has been extremely impressive, but lately he has kind of leveled up in a big way. A big reason for that is he's training under Cub Swanson. Had the win on Contender Series over Teague. Last time out, knocking out Julian Erosa with a jab. He's taking a step up in competition here against Emmers, who is on a back-to-back 2-fight win streak. Went over Hyder Emil last time out, got that grappling going, injured Emil in that fight, but Emmers is tough. He's been in the UFC for a very long time, 22-8, pretty good record professionally. He's been in there against the who's who of the division at 145 pounds, but he is chinny. Most of his professional losses have come via knockout, and Larion Douglas is known as a knockout artist. I do think Douglas is going to be the side here. Again, 5.82 significant strikes landed per minute, and Emmers just 4.88. I think Emmers is going to try to wrestle here, and he might have some early success, but as this fight gets extended, I think any lengthy exchanges are going to prove troublesome for the vet in this matchup. I do like Larion Douglas to probably find the win here via KO, so he's going to be the pick for me in this one. Another heavyweight matchup here between Shamil Gaziev and Kennedy Nzechukwu. I mentioned how I didn't think Spivac or Petrino were all that consistent. I mean, these two, even less so. Just extremely inconsistent, both of these fighters. Kennedy coming off that draw against Marcus Buchecha where he should have won. There was a point deduction in that one, but he tends to fight down to the level of his opponent. Can almost say the same thing against Shamil Gaziev, who didn't look terrible last time out against Pericic. Really talented prospect rising through the rankings at heavyweight. That was a competitive fight until he got caught in the second round, started to fade a little bit. Gaziev, famously from Dagestan, doesn't really wrestle though, and his cardio has been a weakness more than it is a strength. Kennedy is going to have a 5-inch reach advantage here. He has spent most of his career at light heavyweight, though, so while he is a long fighter in this matchup, I don't necessarily know that the size advantage is something he can really rely on to find the victory. Kennedy is someone who needs to put out the jab, doesn't always do it. He can be slow and plotty at times. Back down at light heavyweight, one of the most frustrating results ever. He was a massive favorite against an aging Ovin St. Peru, and he lost that fight via split decision because he just wasn't putting out much volume. I do think he's the more skilled fighter in this matchup. I want to be clear, though, this is one of my least confident picks on the card. Right now, I'm leaning the Gaziev side. I think he can maybe overwhelm Kennedy early here, especially looking at the money lines right now. It's close to a pick 'em, minus 130 for Gaziev. Kennedy, slight underdog. Again, if you're hunting for underdogs, I don't think Kennedy's bad, but he's been so inconsistent. I think Shamil's the type of guy who could overwhelm him early. Kennedy tends to get in his own head. Guys that can intimidate him in the cage do give him trouble, like we saw with St. Peru, which is insane at that point in his career. But I think Gaziev kind of fits that mold. At the same time, again, Gaziev, wildly inconsistent. These are two super volatile fighters. So if you can, maybe just avoid this one. And while usually with heavyweights, we want to go under, like these are guys we've seen just kind of gas out at times and their fights get extended. They end up going to decision when you don't want them to. So proceed with caution in this one. But the pick for me is going to be Gaziev, probably finding an early finish. But Kennedy does have the skills to pull off the upset. So proceed with some caution there. Next matchup here at lightweight, we have Nasrat Haqparast taking on Chris Padilla. And Nasrat coming off that brutal head kick KO against Quillan Sawkill. That lost his age pretty well, though. And he took a lot of time off, so it's good to kind of see that. And then Padilla, another fighter coming off the draw against Mederos. Already talked about him a little bit. Prior to that, had a nice win streak. Padilla was kind of a journeyman coming into the UFC. Really didn't have high expectations for him, but he's been really impressive. And he's a generalist in a lot of ways, Muay Thai striker, but he has great elbows. He kind of has a knack to injure his opponents or cut them up to the point that there are doctor stoppages in his fight. So I do think Padilla is probably the more dangerous striker here. Nasrat, though, has excellent footwork. He's good at range. He has a slight volume advantage here, but he's been extremely hittable over his last few fights, and I think that's going to be the difference in this one. I don't expect either of these guys to lean on the grappling, but if either would, it would probably be Chris Padilla. Also, this card is in California, where Chris Padilla is from, and he's probably going to have the crowd behind him in a big way, so I think that's significant as well. Padilla, currently the underdog, around a plus 100 across most books. I like him here. I think he's a more well-rounded fighter of the two. I think Nasrat could maybe take a step back coming off that brutal head kick KO, and he doesn't really have the power to force Padilla to fight moving backwards. I do think Haqparast on his best night has a footwork advantage. I think he is the better technical striker offensively, which is why he's the favorite. But if you're looking for dogs, you're looking for value, Chris Padilla to me is certainly one I have circled on this card. And I am looking at the DraftKings prices right now, just 8K for Padilla. So he's a dog, but you're not getting a ton of value there, but he is someone I am somewhat confident in to pull off the upset. Quick sip of water here. Marcial Barbosa at featherweight, taking on a newcomer in Ryan Kuse. So this is another fight where the money line seems a little bit ridiculous. But at the same time, it's tough not to just back the favorite. Barbosa coming off a nice KO win over Dennis Bazooka. Minus 900, minus 1,000, though, depending on your book. And Cuse, he's hittable, but he's never been KO'd professionally. He looks decent on his regional tape, but he really hasn't taken on anyone on the level of a Marcio Barbosa. It'll be interesting to see if he can extend this one a little bit. He is probably the better wrestler here, but Barbosa does a good job working his way back to his feet. His first layer of takedown defense isn't great. We see that in the numbers here, 54%. But keep in mind, he took on Weston Wilson, who tried to take him down a million times. That's kind of skewing these numbers. Everyone kind of tries the same game plan against Barbosa. They don't want to stand there in exchange with him because that power is tremendous. I do think Barbosa probably finds the early finish here, especially with Cuse taking this fight on short notice. But I do think the money line's ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't be rushing to tie Barbosa into parlays, and if you do have a book that live betting is available, Barbosa is someone who does tend to fade a little bit if he can't find that early finish. His losses have both come via decision. Again, he always looks great early, but if this fight gets extended by Ryan Cuse here a little bit, I do think he's live to pull off that upset. It's just more likely than not we're going to see him iced out, with an early KO. But I like Barbosa, probably round 1 KO. But again, keep an eye on this one. Don't tie Barbosa in all your parlays, because if it gets extended, his cardio does seem to fail him at times. Shouts out Brian again. One of the other shorts this week was on Stan Dorsainvil taking on Gage Young here. Stan is a newcomer taking this fight on relatively short notice. This line has been all over the place. Gage Young currently sitting around a minus 140 to minus 160 favorite, depending on your book. Gage Young has looked pretty good in the UFC, but he's another guy I would consider to be a generalist. Had a nice win last time out over Thiago Moises, but Moises getting up there in fight years. Not that he's that old, but really kind of fumbled the finish in that one, was dancing in the third round, spent too much time just playing with his food, for lack of a better phrase. Stan, the man here, just super aggressive, and his pace for a lightweight is insane. It's like flyweight pace, but usually these kind of muscle-bound guys, and Stan isn't like ridiculously muscle-bound like Barbosa, who we just described in the last fight, but usually when they're this aggressive, they can't carry that cardio. But Stan, it's tremendous. He can put out volume for 3 rounds. He could shoot for takedowns relentlessly. If he's not getting them, just keep going for them. He does chase submissions on the mat, super aggressive. He has power. He does it all. And I really do like him in this matchup as an underdog. I just think he's the value side because while Gage Young has looked good, and I do think he can be dangerous on the counter here, to see him as a moderate favorite just doesn't feel great to me because, again, I think Stan does everything he does, but a little bit better. And I actually think the cardio advantage for Dorsainvil is probably going to be the difference here. I think Stan was the first round at a high clip. Gage can keep it competitive, but as this fight wears on, I just think he's going to be too much. I like him to find a late finish, and if we click over to DraftKings here, I'm going to pull the screen up. Let's see what he's priced at. Just 7,900 again. All the underdogs I like this week aren't as cheap as maybe I'd want them to be, but at the same time, you do need underdogs to build a quality lineup, and I do think Stan is one of my favorites. Probably have a bet on him on the money line. In a debut, on short notice, taking a step up in competition, definitely proceed with some caution. Don't overinvest, but I do think he's the value side as long as he's going to stay plus money. The one knock on him is that he's in this very small gym. He is in Florida. Like, he could easily switch over to Killcliff or ATT, one of these other gyms, but he's just a guy who continues to improve from fight to fight. He has all the intangibles, just a great athlete. And again, his pace at lightweight is going to be tough for a lot of his opponents. Gage kind of has that type of advantage over most of the guys he's beating. And I just don't think we're necessarily going to see that here in this matchup. So again, another underdog I'm liking is going to be Stan Dorsainvil. Really kind of meme-ish matchup here, for lack of a better word, between Jackson McVey and Wes Schultz. This is kind of a mirror match. We got two guys who are primarily grapplers, I'll say. I mean, certainly more so Wes Schultz, but they both got long hair. They're both not as athletic as we see a lot of the middleweights. Both a little bit undersized for the division here as well. And this is another fight that actually represents a rematch. These guys fought regionally years ago, not regionally, on the amateurs. Well, it was regionally, but as amateurs years ago, Schultz was able to find the submission win there. I mean, Schultz is the one-trick pony, really, here in this matchup. We saw it last time out. took a ton of damage and then eventually found the submission. Jackson McVey comes out shot out of a cannon. He's super aggressive. We saw his win over Cedricus Dumas last time out. Almost beat Zachary Reese in the fight prior to that. He's going to throw a ton of volume here on the feet, especially in the first round. So it's a question of, can Wes Schultz survive that early onslaught and then take this fight to the mat, because McVey does have a grappling advantage over a lot of opponents. But Schultz, if he has anything here, it is that jiu-jitsu. Looking at the money line right now, we're seeing McVey around a -170, -180. I think that's pretty accurate. I don't think this fight gets extended beyond the second round, so maybe if you could see not to start round 3, that might be the best way to go here. I think if you're backing Schultz, it's probably via submission, but I think McVey probably steamrolls him early. And again, when these guys fought on the amateurs, I mean, Schultz looked like he does now. McVey was much smaller. He's kind of grown into his frame. I think the confidence coming off a win is good for him here as well. But this is a low-level and volatile matchup. Off that alone, there's some value on the dog, especially knowing he's won this matchup in the past. But I think the striking here for McVey will be enough, and I think he has the takedown defense. It's terrible on paper to keep this standing, though, because Wes Schultz, as good as he is at jiu-jitsu, he's really not great when it comes to the offensive wrestling, at least in MMA. So I like McVey here to get it done, likely via first round KO. But again, another fight, keep an eye on live betting, because if it gets extended, Schultz is going to be live to find a late submission. Hard opener here between Chanel Dyer and Elise Reed. Chanel Dyer, pretty highly regarded prospect coming out of England. 7.71 official significant strikes landed per minute. Looking at the stats here, kind of going back to her regional tape, 6.36. That's her greatest advantage here. She's a really good striker, decent understanding of footwork, and at a UK top team, I believe she's really been improving her grappling. We see 4 takedown attempts per 15 minutes. Elise Reed, gritty vet, both in UFC and military, I believe, does a good job kind of extending fights and then taking over late if her opponents overextend themselves. She's a generalist. But here, I do think the physical advantages for Dyer are going to be significant. Just a much better athlete, bigger, stronger, younger, faster, all of that. I also think Dyer can mix in the grappling here. Again, Elise Reed just really not great off her back. And I think Dyer is the better striker here by a considerable margin. So outside of Dyer just overexerting herself, chasing a finish early, and then kind of fading from there, I do think she is the side. But once again, theme of this card, ridiculous money line price, around a -750, -800, depending on your book. We've seen Elise Reed do it as a massive underdog before, so another fight to keep an eye on live betting. I do think Dyer's safe, probably gets the win via finish or decision. Kind of leaning the finish, just looking for value, but Elise Reed just not really on Dyer's level in terms of overall athleticism. So quick recap here, guys. I like Hernandez to get the finish. Let's pull up the starting screen. I like Hernandez to get the finish late, likely via submission. I like Spivac to use his jab to pull off a narrow decision. DeRitter via submission. Dolidze will be dangerous early in that one. I think Mason Jones can kind of take over that fight against Mederos as it wears on. Carly Judice on volume likely finds a KO. Gaziev Kennedy, one I'm having trouble with. Right now I'm leaning Gaziev. I don't know. I guess via early finish. I like McVey to find a quick KO. Padilla to pull off the upset in front of his home crowd. Stan Dorsainvil in his debut to pull off the upset as well against a tough out Engage Young. I like Larry and Douglas to find the KO that he's expected to, but be careful there. Again, Emmers is the better wrestler. Douglas's takedown defense isn't great. I like Wint to do what he's supposed to against Terrence Chatman. Chanel Dyer to find success in her fight, and then Marcio Barbosa to find that quick KO there as well. I am Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. Check out the links in the description below, guys. We are giving out a cheat sheet for free every week where we cover 3 fights, go into detail, give you a best bet on those. Brian doing the shorts on this channel. Those have been great. And if you get behind that paywall, you get access to the model. You get access to a lineup builder. My best bets go into the Daily Plug every week. Daily Plug is written by Derek. Great article, really breaking down all these fights for DFS. But yeah, last week, best bets, the top 5, 3 safe bets, and 2 in the moderate range. All hit 5 for 6 there. Didn't quite hit the long shots, but really, really hot on the bets right now. So no better time to get in there. Again, follow me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let us know who you like this week on this card. Should be a really fun one. Looking forward to it. Have fun. Take care, everyone, and good luck.